They called us the latecomers, the cosmic afterthought. By the time our species had built its first telescope, hundreds of other civilizations had already mapped the stars. When we first walked on the moon, the Galactic Council had already established interstellar highways spanning thousands of light years. The galaxy was old, we were young, and in their eyes that made us irrelevant. We didn't know any of this, of course. We were too busy surviving, too busy fighting ourselves, curing diseases, discovering atoms, taming electricity. Our history was a bloody, uphill climb through every hardship a planet could throw at an intelligent species. While other races were nurtured on stable worlds with abundant resources and fewer threats, Earth was brutal. Volcanoes, ice ages, megafauna, famine, pandemics. Every generation of humanity faced extinction in one form or another. But we endured, every setback honed us, every disaster taught us, and though we came late to the game, we evolved fast, we learned how to survive anything. When we finally cracked faster than light travel, it wasn't with elegant designs or clean energy crystals like the older species had. Ours was loud, volatile, and dangerous. The kind of drive system no civilized race would touch, but it worked. When our first manned FDL ship crossed into Council, monitored space, the reaction wasn't curiosity or celebration. It was disdain. They're still burning hydrocarbons. They use combustion engines in their atmosphere shuttles. They irradiate food, and their war history is disturbing. They're violent, primitive, barely above animals. The Galactic Council didn't see us as a threat. They didn't even see us as equals. To them, we were a curiosity, maybe even a liability, a race that should be monitored, maybe quarantined until we matured. But they underestimated one thing: we didn't care what they thought. We never asked to join the Council. We weren't trying to impress them. We just wanted to explore, and when humanity explores, we don't tiptoe, we leap. Our colonies began spreading quickly, too quickly for their taste. Worlds they deemed uninhabitable were perfect challenges for us. Toxic atmospheres, we built domes, hostile ecosystems, we brought flame and steel. Low resources, we mined deeper. It shocked them how fast we adapted. And it scared them. The first time they tried to restrict us, placing a blockade on a system we claimed, they expected submission. Instead, they got a convoy of heavily armed freighters that punched through their picket line like battering rams. We didn't fire first, but when fired upon, we returned it tenfold. The skirmish became an incident. The incident became a political crisis, and the crisis sparked debates across the galaxy. Were humans too wild to be trusted? But while they debated, we kept growing, not with diplomacy, but with grit, with stubbornness, with that unrelenting human drive to push forward, no matter the odds. What they saw as recklessness, we called progress. What they called aggression, we called survival instinct. We didn't evolve in a world of peace and harmony. We evolved in a crucible, and that made us different. The others had the advantage of time, of wisdom, of long, ancient traditions, but we had momentum, energy, the willingness to take risks they wouldn't dream of, and that was our edge. We weren't burdened by legacy. We were fueled by ambition. So yes, we were the last intelligent species to evolve, the slowest to reach the stars, but evolution doesn't reward punctuality. It rewards adaptation, and no one adapts like us. They thought our lateness made us weak. But they were wrong. We weren't behind. We were just getting started. When humanity finally emerged into the galactic spotlight, we did so with a momentum that shocked every other species. While most civilizations advanced slowly and cautiously, guided by centuries of diplomacy and rigid interstellar protocols, We charged forward like a force of nature. The speed of our advancement wasn't just remarkable, it was terrifying. The Galactic Council had seen new species rise before. Most took millennia to reach space travel, then centuries more to establish stable interstellar relations. They passed through carefully monitored phases: exploration, observation, limited expansion, probationary council membership. But humans, we skipped the line. Within just a few generations of achieving faster than light travel, we had established dozens of colonies, developed warp routes independent of council networks, and begun terraforming dead worlds that no other species had even considered worth touching. The council was baffled. How had we moved so fast? The truth was simple. Human history had trained us for this. We were no strangers to revolution. The agricultural revolution changed our biology. The industrial revolution reshaped our cities. The digital revolution connected our minds across oceans, and each time we adapted, not slowly, not fearfully, but explosively. Human innovation wasn't gradual, it was a chain reaction. Once warp technology was discovered, Earth united under a loose confederation, not out of peace, but necessity. Our usual squabbles were still there, but suddenly the stars were within reach, and nothing would stop us from reaching them. Scientists, engineers, prospectors, and dreamers flooded into orbit, ready to leave behind centuries of terrestrial limitations. And with them came the adventurers, the rebels, the pioneers, the ones who had always driven humanity forward, no matter the cost. We didn't wait for perfect conditions. We didn't ask for permission. The first generation of spacefarers were willing to risk their lives on unstable drives and half-tested habitats because they saw what was out there. And more importantly, they believed that humanity belonged among the stars. The old species didn't understand that mindset. They believed in stability, in waiting until every variable was controlled. But for humans, risk wasn't something to avoid. It was something to conquer. Our colonies spread like wildfire. Frozen moons, gas giant satellites, even asteroid belts. No place was too harsh. We didn't require comfort to survive. We just needed opportunity. And we brought with us not only our technology, but our culture, our music, our art, our stories. Every colony became a reflection of humanity's core trait, adaptability. Some alien observers assumed we had a hidden advantage, some breakthrough technology or ancient artifact. But the truth was far more dangerous. We simply didn't stop. Failure didn't break us, it fueled us. Every lost ship, every colony that failed, every disaster we faced in deep space became a lesson, and we learned fast. While other species had built interstellar societies based on tradition and caution, we built ours on momentum. We were constantly improving, constantly adapting. Our ships evolved with each iteration. Our tactics changed with every conflict. And unlike older civilizations, we didn't cling to past methods or sacred customs. If something didn't work, we scrapped it. If something new promised results, we tried it. Immediately. That's what scared the Council the most. Not our weapons, not our numbers, not even our aggression. It was the speed, the unrelenting pace at which humanity grew. To them, it was like watching a tidal wave gain speed on a flat ocean, unstoppable, unpredictable, and entirely unnatural by their standards. And that's when they realized the truth. They hadn't just welcomed another species into the galaxy. They had unleashed a force unlike anything they had encountered before, not because we were powerful, but because we were relentless, because we refused to be limited by fear, failure, or the expectations of those who had come before. We moved fast because we had no other choice. We were the last to arrive, but we were already catching up. And that terrified them more than anything. The Galactic Council had never encountered a species quite like humanity. To them, power was defined by the slow accumulation of technology, diplomacy, and influence over millennia. The Council had operated for tens of thousands of years, and during that time, it had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. But humanity didn't rise according to their rules. We didn't wait for permission, didn't tread carefully. And when we finally arrived on the galactic stage, we didn't ask to sit at the table. We built our own. What shocked them most was not our technology or our aggression. It was our sheer audacity. When humans spoke at council gatherings, they did not wrap their statements in layers of formality or posturing. Our ambassadors told the truth, often bluntly. When treaties were unfair, we said so. When older empires tried to use legal trickery or cultural superiority to manipulate outcomes, we exposed them without fear. And when galactic law failed to protect the weak, we didn't argue, we acted. One particular incident became the turning point: the Alvari trade embargo. The Alvari Empire, one of the Council's founding members, had blockaded a small independent species known as the Thera. The Thera were peaceful, highly intelligent, but lacked military defense. The Alvari accused them of violating minor trade agreement. Really, they just wanted Thera's rare minerals. The Council debated sanctions for years, citing procedure and precedent, but nothing was done. Humanity didn't wait. Within weeks, a human-led flotilla arrived at the Thera system, not to threaten, not to posture, but to escort civilian cargo vessels through the blockade. The Alvari protested, threatening war. The Council scolded the humans for intervening without proper authority. The human commander's response was recorded across the galaxy. If the law doesn't protect the innocent, then the law is wrong. We're not breaking it. We're fixing it. When the Alvari fired warning shots, the humans didn't hesitate. They didn't escalate slowly. They surgically disabled the Alvari fleet in minutes using non-lethal EMP warheads, offered them medical aid, then continued the supply mission. No casualties, no destruction, just overwhelming, calculated precision and absolute defiance. That incident broke the illusion that the Council was in control. They realized that humanity didn't fear power or tradition. We respected it when it was earned, but we would not be bullied by old rules written to serve the ancient empires. We valued justice over protocol, action over delay, and that made us dangerous. Council members debated for years whether to sanction humanity. Some called us reckless, dangerous, disruptive, but others, especially younger species, admired us. We had done in decades what they had not achieved in centuries. We had exposed the Council's flaws and shown that true leadership meant making hard choices, not hiding behind procedures. It wasn't just about the Thera. Across the galaxy, humans began setting new precedents. We offered open-source technology to developing civilizations. We built multi-species stations that welcomed those the Council had ignored. We created independent mediation networks that resolved disputes faster and more fairly than Council courts. Slowly, a new movement formed, one that followed human ideals: fairness, action, responsibility. The old powers saw this as a threat. In a way, they were right. Humanity wasn't interested in overthrowing the system. We were rewriting it, not with force, but with example, and every time we acted with principle, others followed. We weren't just expanding. We were evolving the galaxy's moral compass. That's when the council realized something terrifying. They were no longer leading, they were following. The youngest species looked to humans for guidance. Not because we were perfect, but because we dared to act when no one else would. Because we showed them that even in a galaxy ruled by fear, corruption, and endless debate, one species could make a difference. And that was the moment the old order began to crumble, not with a war, but with a whisper that echoed through every star system. What if the humans are right? Humanity's disruptive influence wasn't limited to military action or direct defiance. It was in how we thought, how we redefined the very foundation of diplomacy, conflict, and unity in a galaxy bound by ancient, crumbling bureaucracy. The Galactic Council, in its millennial, long rule, had built a framework based on precedent, hierarchy, and fear of instability. To them, stability was sacred, even if it meant injustice or stagnation. But to humans, stability without justice was just tyranny in slow motion. That philosophical divergence, more than anything, became the friction point. Where most species viewed peace as the absence of conflict, humans viewed peace as the result of resolved tension. Real peace to us meant addressing root causes, not covering them with bureaucratic tape. We were builders of solutions, not caretakers of old problems. That terrified the elder species who had come to depend on stalemates and inaction to maintain their influence. They called us impatient. We called ourselves principled. One key moment solidified humanity's ideological insurgency, the diplomatic summit on Phyros Prime. It was held to resolve a territorial dispute between three species that had been ongoing for over 2 centuries. The Council had hosted a dozen prior summits on this same issue, each ending in vague declarations and continued stalemates. Humanity, invited only as observers, shocked the room by submitting an independent proposal within the first day. One that not only acknowledged all parties' concerns, but introduced an entirely new concept, shared sovereignty. To the Council, this was blasphemy, borders were sacred, compromise was dangerous, but humans didn't care about tradition for tradition's sake. We asked a simple question: why must the future be shackled to ancient grudges? It wasn't just the proposal that was radical, it was the tone. Our diplomats didn't couch ideas in 10 layers of formality. They spoke like engineers solving a design problem, not politicians maneuvering through rhetoric. And the younger delegates from the involved species, who had grown up watching human media, reading our literature, studying our history, gravitated toward the proposal instantly. They saw possibility, not heresy. This made us a beacon to the rising powers and a threat to the established ones. Human embassies became hotbeds of innovation, hosting think tanks, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic apprenticeships. We trained mediators in direct negotiation techniques, modeled on everything from our own conflict resolution practices to lessons from our chaotic history. Ironically, the very volatility that had once made humanity a cautionary tale now made us mentors. We had survived our own near-extinction events, learned from world wars, and emerged stronger, not because we were flawless, but because we were willing to change. That adaptability became our most powerful export. While the Council hoarded power, humans gave knowledge away. Where the Council ruled by fear of collapse, we offered collaboration through understanding. Where they stalled, we acted. Soon, entire systems began adopting human-style treaties, short, clear, flexible. Human conflict mediation centers began out, performing council courts, resolving disputes in months rather than decades. And in an act that truly shook the old guard, several minor civilizations left the Council entirely, choosing instead to join the human concord. an open alliance based not on dominance but mutual growth and proactive defense. To the Council's architects, this was treason. To many in the galaxy, it was evolution. Humanity's greatest offense wasn't war, it was hope. Hope that systems could be better, that the future didn't have to be a continuation of the past, that the impossible could be practical with courage and creativity. Our defiance wasn't chaos, it was construction. Our rebellion wasn't against order, but against the worship of old orders that no longer served the living. And as our vision spread, the Council's greatest fear came true, not that we would tear down the galaxy, but that we would show it a better way to build. The final rift between humanity and the Galactic Council came not from warships or technology, but from ideology, and a single human who dared to do what no one else would, tell the truth in the most sacred of places. Her name was Ambassador Leona Miziko, a former civil rights lawyer turned diplomat who was known not for pleasantries or compromise, but for an unshakable moral compass. She had negotiated ceasefires in war zones, brokered peace between blood-feuding megacorps on Mars, and once famously talked down a rogue AI during its hostile takeover of a lunar network hub, all with nothing more than logic, empathy, and grit. But nothing prepared her for the Council. Leona was sent to the High Council Assembly on Caledros Roman 4, a megastructure orbiting a neutron star, to speak on behalf of a human-led initiative, the Interstellar Justice Mandate. The proposal sought to reform the Council's outdated legal frameworks, demanding transparency in conflict arbitration, equitable representation for emerging civilizations, and an end to the practice of economic embargoes as political punishment. To the humans and a growing chorus of galactic youth, this was a manifesto of progress. To the Council, it was sedition. As Leona stood in the Assembly's amphitheater, with thousands of delegates suspended in floating rings around her, she did not begin with protocol or pleasantries. She began with a story of a small human colony, Zara's Reach, left unaided for decades due to a council embargo on Earth during the Martian rebellions. Cut off from supplies, Zara's Reach endured famine, radiation storms, and disease. It survived not because of the Council, but despite it. And when relief finally came, the Council issued no apology, only paperwork. The Council's silence, Leona said, voice echoing across the chamber, was not impartiality. It was complicity. Gasps filled the air. Several delegations shut off their holographic feeds, but Leona pressed on. She detailed evidence of economic coercion, unequal legal representation, and the exclusion of over 300 sentient species from policy votes, species whose civilizations the Council deemed too immature for governance, yet taxed and regulated all the same. Then she dropped the bombshell, a declassified human intelligence report showing that a prominent Council race, the Virelians, had orchestrated a covert proxy war in the Canary system under the guise of peacekeeping. It wasn't just corruption, it was sanctioned manipulation, and Leona had the receipts. That moment was irreversible. The Council responded not with debate, but with outrage. The Assembly accused her of undermining galactic unity, of manufacturing dissent, of breaching diplomatic decorum. They moved to censure her, and by extension, all of humanity. Leona's final words were recorded across billions of channels. If unity demands silence in the face of injustice, then it is not unity. It is oppression dressed in gold. In the days that followed, the Council passed a resolution barring humans from holding diplomatic seats or leading interstellar negotiations. They framed it as a necessity to preserve peace and order, but the galaxy wasn't blind. Across hundreds of systems, protests erupted. Civilizations that had never challenged the Council before now flew human flags. Cultural leaders invoked Leona's speech. The term Maziko Protocol became a rallying cry for diplomatic reform. And Earth didn't flinch. It withdrew from the Council entirely, forming the Stellar Concord, a new, open, rotating governance model that prioritized rapid response, cultural autonomy, and enforced accountability. Within 5 years, over 60 species joined. Leona Maziko retired quietly to a teaching post in the Cygni colonies, but her legacy rewrote the galactic order. She had proven that diplomacy was not about keeping power. It was about using it responsibly. And when power forgets that, it's not humanity that becomes a problem, it's humanity that becomes the solution. When the Council expelled humanity from its diplomatic ranks, many assumed Earth would retreat into isolationism, licking its wounds and tending to its bruised pride. But humanity didn't sulk, it adapted, it evolved. It did what it always did when told no by a greater power. It built something better. What began as scattered alliances and mutual aid agreements soon coalesced into something unprecedented, the Stellar Concord. Unlike the bloated bureaucracy of the Council, the Concord was nimble, decentralized, and transparent. Every member civilization, from the coral, born Tylu, to the crystalline mind, clusters of Erethex Prime, had equal representation. Their votes weren't just symbolic, they shaped real-time policy decisions. The Concord adopted open-source governance platforms, real-time oversight protocols, and even allowed AI mediators to assist with data integrity. It was a system born of humanity's frustration with the old ways and powered by the burning desire to prove that a better galaxy was possible. The Concord didn't claim to replace the Council, it simply made the Council obsolete. And the galaxy noticed. The first major shift came when the refugee fleets from the Droska War, ignored for years by Council bureaucracy, were granted full sanctuary and citizenship by the Concord. Within months, Droska engineers were helping terraform Concord border worlds. Their biotech revived dying ecosystems. Their culture, once on the brink of extinction, flourished under Concord protection. The Council's response was a terse communique: handle your own consequences. The galaxy's response was louder. Nearly a dozen smaller civilizations petitioned to leave the Council and join the Concord. But what truly shifted the balance was justice. When the Zarnathi banking conglomerates collapsed, causing economic tremors across two arms of the galaxy, the Council refused to intervene. Billions faced starvation, debt slavery, and ruin. The Concord, acting without delay, froze the Zarnathi assets within its systems and launched a relief program using a rotating contribution system from member worlds. Concord investigators uncovered decades of predatory practices and corporate sabotage. Trials were held, reparations were paid. The Zarnathi executives, once untouchable, were tried and sentenced under interstellar law crafted by the very people they had exploited. Justice wasn't a concept in the Concord. It was a tool, a weapon against systemic abuse, a promise made and kept. What made the Concord thrive wasn't just policy, it was culture. The humans brought storytelling, openness, and the willingness to confront failure head-on. Instead of hiding scandals, they published them. Instead of silencing whistleblowers, they rewarded them. Instead of bowing to the way things have always been, they asked, how can this be better? That mindset spread like wildfire. Education became a shared priority. Translation protocols were enhanced to allow not just communication, but true cultural exchange. Entire generations of alien youth grew up reading human philosophy and watching Earth documentaries. They saw not conquerors or pariahs, but reformers, risk-takers, revolutionaries. Humanity's banishment had, ironically, made them more influential than ever. In the Council's eyes, the Concord was an existential threat. But it was too late. The more they tried to discredit it, the more they revealed their own rot. Trade shifted, migration shifted, power shifted. Soon, even once, loyal council member races began sending observers to the Concord, testing the waters. The council was still mighty, yes, but it was now irrelevant. The last blow came quietly, diplomatically. A universal ceasefire initiative proposed by the Concord, a model treaty that included neutral arbitration, trauma reparation standards, and refugee integration, was ratified by 412 civilizations. Only 87 of those were council members. And the council had nothing to do with it. The day humanity was banned from galactic diplomacy, they became the architects of a new galactic era, not through firepower, but through principle, not through dominance, but cooperation. They didn't burn bridges, they built new ones, and made them stronger. It turns out the best way to win a political war is not to play the council's game, it's to change the rules entirely.